Good morning, folks. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Dustin Jones, one of the older adult faculty, and we are going to talk about intentional underdosage, when we want to use this very important skill, and then how we want to go about using this in the clinic, in the home, in the hospital, in the gym. So this scenario is, I would say, a common scenario for many of us working with older adults. I'm just going to play out a very common situation that we often see, right? We have Betty coming to us, right? When we have become more of a fitness forward provider, when we may be exercising ourselves, and we've experienced this too to some extent, right? You start to learn that when you start to train at some of these higher percentages that we will read about in a lot of the strength and conditioning literature, a lot of the physical therapy related articles that are dosing, particularly resistance training, that we start to use these 80%, 85% of one rep max. We start to test our one rep max. And what can often happen with many of us as we experience this is that we realize that we are stronger than what we perceive, right? That the reality of our capacity is a little different than our perceptions. And by experiencing the struggle of challenging yourself at 80, 85% 1RM, testing your one rep max, you start to realize that you are able to do more than what you perceive. Your perceptions start to align with reality. And we want to create that for our patients as well, right? So we read the articles, we understand the research. We may take, MOA Live or MOA Level 1 or even Fitness Athlete. I know we'll discuss this as well. And we know and we see a lot of the research looking at dosing exercise based off of a percentage of a 1RM that we know we want to get to a relatively high percentage early on in the rehab process, right? We know that's beneficial for Betty, but Betty has a long history of chronic low back pain. She has a diagnosis of osteoporosis. She has a diagnosis of degenerative disc disease, and we'll throw in osteoarthritis as well. Betty perceives herself to be weak, to be fragile. She does not trust her body. She does not trust her back, for example. She has a lot of fear on board, and associated with that fear are a lot of fear avoidance behaviors. She has a lot of perceptions around what her body can actually handle. But you, being the fitness forward provider, when you see Betty walk into the door, when you see her carrying her 10, 15-pound purse, that you kind of are sizing up Betty, and you probably think that Betty could easily deadlift a 53-pound kettlebell off the ground. And that is probably true. But Betty doesn't believe that. Betty thinks that she would hurt her back. She has a lot of fear around, quote unquote, bending forward or doing a deadlift movement. And so in this situation, this very common situation, Betty's perceptions do not necessarily align with reality or her true capacity. Her perceived capacity is less than her true capacity. And in this scenario, it is our job to show Betty what she is truly capable of doing, for her to see and feel and understand what her true capacity is. That is a very freeing moment for her. That is a very empowering moment that impacts so many things about Betty's life. Now, how do we do that? This is where intentional underdosage comes into play. I'm saying intentional underdosage because we are intentionally, quote unquote, underdosing someone. We are giving them probably an easier stimulus compared to their true capacity. But we can do this in a very skilled and tactful manner to where their perceived capacity continually goes up and up and up, closer to what they're truly capable of doing. And so if we were to define intentional underdosage, we are going to be dosing exercise based on perceived capacity. And we're going to take a gradual or grade exposure approach, gradually exposing Betty to exercise, but we're dosing based on perceived capacity. So let's use this as an example. Let's take Betty. Let's say she has, we're pretty confident that she can deadlift a 53-pound kettlebell off the ground, right? She's got the whole host of diagnoses, a lot of fear on board. We're not going to start day one by handing her the 40 or 44-pound kettlebell, right? She is very concerned about even picking up a 10-pound kettlebell. She may be afraid of kettlebells in general, may have never even touched them before. So we're going to initiate, let's say deadlift is a goal that we have. She wants to be able to pick up her grandkid, for example, or be able to pick up more weight without pain, whatever it may be. but let's say deadlift is in the cards. We may start with a very, very underdosed activity for Betty, like a banded deadlift. And we may even use a good old yellow TheraBand with Betty. We're going to get some successful reps. We're going to ensure that we are entering into this kind of new territory where she is going to get some what we would call early wins. That can help build the momentum and build some of the positive expectations around what we're going to be doing throughout this course of care. We don't want to do the opposite, which is what typically happens, what I've done so many times, right? All right, Betty, you probably have a 53-pound kettlebell deadlift. Let's go ahead. Just grab this 35-pound. Let's not waste any time. Pick up that thing for me. And it usually doesn't end well, right? Even if they attempt it, it can be a rather challenging scenario. So we want to start ensuring that we have some early success. We get some early wins. Let's say session 2, maybe a few days, maybe a week, whatever that may be, you know, in your situation. And we assess. Betty, how'd you feel after that? Were you a little sore? We probably already discussed DOMs, hopefully, before we ask that question. Do you feel good? Dustin, it was awesome. That really wasn't much of an issue. I think I did really well there. Okay, we got the green light. Let's progress. But I'm not going, all right, let's get the 35-pounder. No, I'm going to take a small incremental jump. I may go and grab a 5-pound weight, for example, and I'm probably going to put it in an elevated surface. So we reduce some of the range of motion there because those lighter weights are so low to the ground. That can be kind of tough for a lot of these folks when performing the deadlift. So we do a very lightweight elevated surface, reassess. How we doing here? Awesome. Okay, then we can bump it up a little bit, not too much, right? So maybe if I start with the 5, then I'll go up to the 10-pound weight. Based on the response, then we make these gradual increases. Once we're probably in that 10, 15-pound range, I'll test, hey, how does it feel picking that up from the ground? So we increase the range of motion a little bit. And if that goes well, then we have that slow incremental increase all the way up to the point where we're deadlifting 35, 44-pound kettlebell, maybe even maxing out with their 53-pound kettlebell. Now, Betty, in this situation, we need to acknowledge the variability in the duration or the length of that intentional underdosage phase, right? And a guiding principle that we like to use is that it needs to be as short as possible, but as long as necessary. It needs to be as short as possible, but as long as necessary. And this can be painful, very painful. I've had some folks, I've got one person in my gym at Stronger Life. It's a gym for folks over 55, group-based classes. I have a member that owns a nursery. So this woman is picking up pots, soil, moving plants, moving trees, very, very intense labor in the day-to-day job. But inside the context of a group class, she won't pick up a 5-pound weight. For 2.5 years, we were just using PVC pipe for so many movements. And now she's picking up the 5-pounder, the 10-pounder, 20-pound tidal tank, 30-pound slam ball as of late. We're talking years with this individual. But some folks, that intentional underdosage phase may just be in session, right? So it varies dramatically, and it's going to dictate based on their response and perception of what we're exposing them to. And so we're trying to make it as short as possible, but as long as necessary. And if we're diligent with trying to be progressive, but also acknowledging their perceptions of their body and what they can handle and the movements that we're exposing to, over time, their perceived capacity is going to become more in line with their true capacity. And that is a beautiful, beautiful moment when people's perceptions of themselves are utterly changed and what they can actually handle. That influences so many decisions that they make, right? The hobby that they gave up because they were worried it was going to hurt them. The trip that they have been avoiding because they're so worried about their ability to walk, over 15,000 steps in a day, right? All of these things that have influenced their life and ultimately lowered their quality of life, they're able to see, wait a second, I can do that. I can take that trip. I can do that hobby. And it just snowballs from there. And as they discover their true capacity, the beautiful thing is they get more comfortable pushing that further and further and further. They get comfortable pushing their true limits. And as we all know, when you get more comfortable with that very, very uncomfortable zone, you get fitter, you get stronger, you get better as a result. And it just continues to snowball. And we all have the ability to do that. And I think all of us, especially in the context of rehabilitation, of physical therapy, outpatient physical therapy, when your primary driver is pain, right? That's why people come to see you most of the time if you're an outpatient clinician, that you have such a tremendous opportunity to walk people along this journey of intentional underdosage, of aligning their perceived capacity with their true capacity, and ultimately changing their lives. We have so many amazing opportunities to do that. So I'd love your thoughts. I want to hear some examples for you all of some intentional underdosage that you have used or experienced. I'd love to hear some stories of the 20-some-year-old that had the ACL reconstruction. That, man, there was a lot of fear avoidance behaviors on board. How did you expose them to what they were truly capable of doing to help them get back onto the field? Or if you're working with older adults, when you've had that person who's been plagued for decades by what some physician or physical therapist told them decades ago about their body that was not helpful, how you kind of change their perceptions so they align with their true capacity. I would love to hear stories in the Instagram comments or YouTube comments. All right. I appreciate y'all hanging and listening to me this lovely Wednesday. Before I go, I do want to mention MMOA, Modern Management of the Older Adult. We're kicking off 2025 strong. So our level 1 online course, 8 weeks, is going to be starting on January 13th. This is where we dig into some of these intentional underdosage principles and how we apply it to different scenarios. Our level 2, if you've taken level 1, is going to be starting on January 9th. And then MLA Live, we're going to be all across the country in 2025. A few right out the gate. We're going to be in Hendersonville, Tennessee, January 18th and 19th, at Athol, Idaho, on January 25th, 26th, and then Carson City, Nevada, February 1st and 2nd. All right, grateful for y'all. Y'all have a lovely rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon.